Have you ever considered that you are the problem? No, you haven't considered that you're the problem. You very well could be the problem. All right, we're going to be listing the things that you dislike about yourself. There's nothing that you dislike about yourself, right? Okay, well, we're going to be doing a little bit of an auditory check and also a little bit of a visual check. This is going to be to see if we can stimulate some thoughts right out of your head. I'm going to be just merely jiggling this little serum around your ears, and as it jiggles, I'm going to be asking you some various questions, and I want you to just give me the first thoughts that pop to the top of your mind. I'm going to give you a 3-second countdown to articulate whatever pops to your mind in 2 words, and then I will be noting it down. Okay? Very good. Likewise, I will also be pressing this light into your eyes, and it is going to help me not only detect what kind of responses you're giving me visually, but it's also going to help me better understand what it is that you're seeing, whether it be in yourself or around you. Okay? Very good. Well, in that case, let us begin. First question. Do you happen to exercise? What is my definition of exercise? If you're very depressed, I would say walking. And if you're not that depressed, I would say bicycling, gardening, going to the gym. I would say perhaps even trampolining, yoga, Pilates, anything really, anything. No? Okay. I'm going to note that down in the list of cons to your life. What was that? Oh, it shouldn't be in a list of cons in your life? Right, give me 1 moment. I'm going to grab my light real quick. I'm just going to be examining your eyes. Right, okay. Yeah, I noticed a little bit of anxiety as you're trying to escape accountability for your actions. Keep in mind, if one is depressed, sometimes one doesn't understand how to escape the landlock that is inside of your mind, but walking is pretty much secondhand nature. It is something that you learn in infancy. So walking is definitely, unless of course you literally physically cannot walk, you can walk. I'm going to note that down. Okay, there we go. All right, question number 2. How comfortable are you with being alone? Okay, that's interesting. Well, we can consider that a little bit of a spectrum. Sometimes people are a little bit too comfortable being alone, and sometimes people are a little bit too uncomfortable being alone. So it really is kind of like a sliding spectrum. If you're a little too comfortable being alone, that means that you might start to develop your own fantasy of what reality means, and you start to really just kind of like isolate yourself from objective truth and start to formulate your own perception of how the world works, and that starts to put yourself and others in danger. And then if you are a little bit uncomfortable being alone, you start to absorb your own identity and personality into a group, hoping that whatever group accepts you is the group that you'll adapt to. There is no sense of your own oneness. There's no sense of your own sound personality. And that can also be quite nasty. So I'm just going to note that down. Okay. What was that? Well, in the case of you being uncomfortable being alone, I would recommend staying alone and composing your thoughts as to what it is that you like. What is your identity? What is it that makes you feel good? You have no idea what any of those things are. Alrighty then. Do you have any interests outside of being liked? Okay, let's assess. Why is it that you feel like you constantly need to be liked as opposed to pursuing any other goal? Do you like yourself? You love yourself. That's code for no. Okay. Let's build on how you can like yourself. Have you ever considered completing a task conscientiously? As in, like, you do a homework assignment or you complete a responsibility that you needed to do, but you do so fully immersed in the responsibility, not because you have to, but because you take charge of it. How many times would you say that you do this? Well, if you try to avoid the responsibility, if you try to avoid the homework assignment, the responsibility, the charge, you're going to find yourself not really liking yourself because you're not a dependable person even to yourself. And that typically does not rub anyone, including oneself, quite well. It really feels like you're out of control of your own destiny, fate, sense of self, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to assign you to start getting yourself into a nice little routine. If you start to wake up at a certain time, complete certain tasks, get certain issues finished, take up a hobby perchance, complete your work on time, going above and beyond, just so that way you can give yourself personal satisfaction while also keeping in mind that you're being exploited. And then also just basically regimenting your life, you're going to notice that your sense of self starts to become a little more fulfilled, and you start to develop little understandings of your identity as it swirls around. And as you develop a better sense of identity, you won't need to change or adapt yourself to fit with groups that will then like you, because the sense of liking that you desire is within yourself. Now, on the contrary, for those who like to stay a little bit too alone, I would highly recommend going out perhaps on a walk in a public venue. I would highly recommend going out and perhaps just eating a meal in a sit-down restaurant, or perhaps just getting a drink at a sit-down open bar, whatnot, or especially one that has like a social gathering to it. If you dislike people, welcome the fact that you dislike a person, and then perhaps analyze why it is that you dislike that person, and be open to their more good-natured traits. Always keep a charitable opinion in mind. Even if they rub you the wrong way, perhaps that irritation or irritability is a sense of discomfort with oneself, or a discomfort with the world around you, which once again, the world around you is really only an extension of your perception of the world itself. And perhaps even consider going to safe spaces, like, for example, a forest or a library, or perhaps a park. Yeah. So those are my little remedies for you. Now, on to the next question. Are you someone who's very romantically or physically driven? By physically, I do mean like physically driven. Yeah, as in like you're constantly pursuing emotional dopamine hits from people that you have a very short-sighted, superficial attraction to, whether you really have no reason to be believing that this is someone that you're going to be spending the rest of your life with, yet for some reason you are devoting a huge amount of your emotional dependence on them. And also vice versa on the physical end, that you would be actually engaging in very physically intimate acts with people who you have absolutely no sense of responsibility over, absolutely no respect for, or no sense of commitment to. Yeah, just chasing after dopamine hits pretty much. And do you enjoy this? Right, okay. Tell me, why do you enjoy it? It satisfies a little itch inside of you. It makes you feel like life is a little more interesting, like you're not so bored anymore. Right, okay. Okay. Keep your eyes open for me. Very interesting. Okay, very interesting. Right, okay, cool. Very interesting. Nice, interesting, very interesting. Okay, I can tell that you're kind of a boring person. I'm just going to note that down right here. If your only hobby is pursuing short-term, superficial dopamine hits from people who you absolutely have no care for, you become a very predictable person who's running from basically vice to vice, or perhaps you become someone who's very easy to see. It's kind of like you approach and people just kind of know, like, already instinctually what it is that you want, and the only people who would actually engage with you are those that share similar traits as you, the same sort of similar dopamine hits. But unfortunately, the danger of that is you never understand what their motivations for pursuing that dopamine hit, nor what is the context or true breadth of what they're looking for you is. Hence why it's just kind of boring and dangerous. It's like, why would you engage in a boring, dangerous activity? It's kind of like speeding on the highway. It's like, that's a boring, dangerous activity. Not only is there nothing fun or stimulating about this, except for maybe just a cry for help from depressed people, but also it's like, it's just straight up dangerous and there's nothing enjoyable about it. I'm going to be noting this down. Okay. Have you ever considered giving pause to your life? yeah, just enjoying perhaps a boring little engagement with someone where you really get to understand and know what their interests in life are. Boring interests in life. Yeah, like if someone enjoys discussing like how taxes function, or they discuss their jobs, or perhaps if they start complaining about the mundanity of their job, or perhaps someone's little interests or memories or whatever, but not in a way where you're collecting it as pieces of information to try and patch in whatever they might need in order to, like, essentially just plug in whatever they might want, so that way you can gain access to whatever it is that you want out of them, but rather as a genuine sort of interest of just like learning about their life, like a Wikipedia sort of link, and just being like, oh, that's an interesting story you have right there, and then gaining a sense of trust with them over time, over a long period of time. No, that's not of interest to you. I'm going to note that down. What was that? It's very boring and practical and just kind of like, why is it worth your time? Right. Have you been hurt before? Okay. Typically people who think that way have been very heartbroken in life. They either had just someone, kind of ruin an expectation of theirs, or they just kind of either cycled out so many quick relationships to try and fill holes inside of themselves that were probably left open by someone that they loved, perhaps a parental figure, perhaps a sibling, perhaps some sort of guide that they trusted. And unfortunately now they don't quite understand what the point of having a committed, stable relationship is, because they can't fathom what kind of illusion that is, what kind of a fantasy that is. It's only meant for people who are living in some sort of daydream, in some sort of fictitious, sort of like shallow reality, when in reality it takes a lot to live in a reality such as that, which requires a lot of depth. And only people who are superficial and shallow, much like Woody Allen, would comment on the committed relationships being superficial and shallow, or relationship that only superficial and shallow people can hold, such as was referenced in Annie Hall. What was that? I'm sorry, I get lost in my head sometimes. Oh, I'm noting down some of your reactions. Okay, interesting. I'm going to look into your eyes again. Right. Okay. I would suggest building a relationship with yourself. That's how you can learn how to build a relationship with others. If you can have a strong, committed relationship to yourself, where you can have mutual respect and trust with your own decisions, with your own mind, with how you think, with how your opinions function, being slow to react and all of that jazz, you can start to learn what kind of person you can collaborate better with, one that isn't going to be essentially seeking out dopamine hits from you in whatever context, in whatever way that they seek it out, because people can wear masks and pretend and match you where you're at, you thinking that you're wearing a mask, and meeting them where they're at, or perhaps unconsciously doing so, and then they can surprise you with something that was a little up their sleeve that they pretty much were certain that you weren't aware of, but that they needed to bring you closer to water, essentially, much like a crocodile waiting for a deer to drink, or an antelope to drink from the water. So about building a relationship with yourself, I would highly recommend following that former step of you basically committing to your hobbies, your goals, your aspirations, your building a sort of discipline and structure with yourself. So that way, when you have a better relationship with yourself and aren't having a wandering eye, looking out for your next prey, looking out for the next romantic prospect, or your next physical prospect, that then you can become someone that is trustworthy and can attract someone who over time you can build a bond with. Because unfortunately, if you keep your eye looking for romantic or physical prospects, no one's going to like you, because you're going to be creepy and you're going to be very, very uncomfortable to be around, and that's just a fact. It's like sort of like that kind of like creepy guy who lives down the street just being like, hey little kids, you want some? It's weird. It's just weird. Oh, also, typically, especially men, but like typically anyone could fall into it. I mean, look at Elizabeth Hurley and Jennifer Lawrence going into movies where Elizabeth Hurley is doing like a spicy movie, you could say, that her son is directing, of his mother, and Jennifer Lawrence being like a cougar to like a 19-year-old boy. Women do it too. Nonetheless, it's in a way to be like a man, and it's like, anyways, yeah, when dopamine hits start to get a little dull, people start to lift up the ante for wanting more and more and more. That's why you try to build a relationship with yourself, so that way you don't become a complete degenerate. So I'm just going to be writing this down. Build discipline. build a routine, develop hobbies, develop exercise regime. This could include just gardening, this could include bicycling, this could include going for a walk, a jog, this could include trampolining, this could include stretching. So yeah, I'm just going to be noting all of this down. Very good. Okay, now give me one moment. You said that you really loved yourself, right? Have you ever considered that when someone's like talking big game about themselves, everyone can tell that they really hate themselves? You don't hate yourself? Then why do you treat yourself so cruelly? Sometimes the first step to betterment is acknowledging that there's a problem. When you get irritated, or when someone bothers you, or when someone hits like a sore spot, or it makes you a little bit nervous or whatever, do you feel like your nervous system goes into like an overwhelming overdrive, or then like all of this repressed rage inside of your body then just kind of jumps out of you? That's not good. So I'm going to be recommending that you kind of like scoop that rage out and just kind of like, stay aware of it, and then recognize that there's never a justification for you lashing out at someone. But also, if it's still in your system, it's something that you do need to manage and need to regulate inside of your body. One must always take responsibility for one's own actions, because if you end up adopting the mentality of, oh, well, it was done to me, everyone in the world can start doing that, and everyone then starts to do it to others, and then the process continues and repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats. Your actions are always your own. Always your own. Nonetheless, I would recommend, once again, following the other steps that I've laid out, but also I would recommend that when you do get angry, I would highly recommend just sort of like walking away, going off and doing some task, or perhaps taking a deep breath and just sort of like distracting yourself, perhaps watching something that kind of makes you blow off steam a little bit, and then reflecting on how if you could just kind of deviate from just immediately responding, how that's always within your power, and then that rage starts to kind of dissipate, because the rage sometimes is just in your body since you can't quite regulate or control it. When you don't respond, then you avoid having to go through the whole process of you've responded, now you have to make justifications for why you responded, avoiding accountability. That avoidance of accountability makes you feel out of control in your life. Feeling out of control dysregulates your nervous system even further. Then the process gets worse and worse and worse and repeats itself. And since you're not acknowledging the tools that you do have, you get more confused about why it is that you're reacting the way you do, and then you make more justifications, which once again removes accountability. And then when you remove accountability, you start to feel more out of control out of your life, and you start to become a person that becomes very untrustworthy, because no one can really trust you to take accountability for your actions. Okay. I'm noticing a little bit of like in your face. Keep your eyes open for me. What was that? Why should you change if the world is terrible? Because maybe you are a problem in the world that's making it terrible. Tell me, do you feel like you've contributed positively to the world? Why should you contribute to the world positively? Right. Okay. What you reap is what you sow. So if you don't contribute to the world positively, then get ready to enter a world of pain. you're going to basically be only surrounded by people who think the same way as you do. And they will all torment you by giving you mirrors or reflections of the very same attitudes and actions that you are committing. And consequently, you will soon realize why it is that you should start contributing positively to the world. For like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together. Okay, here are your notes. I want you to take them. Take them with you. And I want you to keep them well in mind. And as you keep them well in mind, I want you to reflect on them and start to remain aware and develop yourself. Take action. Sometimes the mind tricks one's sense of self into thinking that you're doing something. In reality, you're just constantly thinking and doing absolutely nothing except being tricked by your own mind. And unfortunately, there really is no tolerance for people who stay inside of their head doing nothing except basically poisoning or wasting away the times of others. It's a very finite amount of time that we have on earth. It's meant to be enjoyed as much as you can, processed when the pain comes, and to be made peace with the experience of existence. There really is no other option. Okay? Okay. In that case, we will be scheduling your next appointment. Give me one moment to just jot that one down. Perfect. All right. Well, I can't wait to see you for your next appointment. Take care and